I'm Rick Hart. This is your APTN News Brief for Wednesday, March 13th. The horrific 2022 mass stabbings on James Smith Cree Nation have produced new recommendations for change, and last month a Saskatchewan inquest produced 33 recommendations. Now 14 more have been announced by the National Joint Board of Investigations for the Parole Board of Canada and Correctional Services Canada. Rachel May reports.
In August 2021, Miles Sanderson, the killer in the stabbing attacks, was on statutory release after completing a federal sentence for a number of offenses, including assault, uttering threats, and robbery. In May 2022, just 4 months before the attacks, he was unlawfully at large. The National Joint Board of Investigation, made of 6 people with expertise in criminal justice, policing, mental health, and conditional release systems, announced that releasing Sanderson into the community was reasonable. There was 4 recommendations made for Correctional Service Canada: assessing risk for domestic violence, developing ways to administer psychological measures against domestic violence, addressing if offenders under supervised release are suicidal, and reinstating community corrections liaison personnel. The Parole Board of Canada had 10 recommendations, ranging from reviewing scheduling guidelines to reviewing how employees are trained to understand the risk of domestic violence in offenders. Both the Parole Board and Correctional Services are finalizing action plans to implement the recommendations. They're in consultation with James Smith Cree Nation. Rachel May, APTN National News, Saskatoon.
A controversial Métis hunting cabin at an Ontario lake will soon be removed. Built 2 hours northeast of Sudbury in 2019 on Pond Lake by Mark and Peter Descotu, the Métis Nation of Ontario members claimed it was their right to do so. But following legal action launched by the Temagami First Nation last November, it now appears the province has ordered the cabin's removal by June 1st. Chief Shelley Moore Frappier says the order came in a letter from Ontario's Ministry of Natural Resources. She says Temagami is happy with the decision.
I guess it felt like a little bit of vindication because that's always been our position. So it shouldn't have been there in the first place. So having it removed is definitely a way to move forward.
To Ottawa, where Inuit Tipiriit Kanatami President Nathan Obed met with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau Tuesday morning. It follows the PM's meeting last week with AFN National Chief Cindy Woodhouse. And following a photo op with the media, Obed said there are a number of issues ITK and the Liberal government still need to work on.
Lots of conversations still to be had about, say, the implementation of Bill C-92, the Indigenous Child and Family Services Act. Also, the work that we continue to do together through the Inuit Crown Partnership, and then the government's adoption of the Inuit Nunavut policy, also our framework on co-development of legislation, and many other very historic shifts in the relationship between Inuit and Canada.
The Yukon government has begun the process of setting up an arm's-length health body. On Monday, it tabled the new Health Authority Act in the territory's Legislative Assembly. Meant to operate in collaboration with First Nations governments, the authority will address issues like systemic racism in healthcare and offer culturally safe and inclusive care. The Yukon and Nunavut are Canada's only jurisdictions without a health authority. On Tuesday, the federal government signed agreements totaling $86 million to improve Yukon territorial healthcare. Vuntut Gwitchin First Nation Chief Pauline Frost chairs the Chiefs Committee on Health. She says it's important Indigenous people get the health services they need.
That they have a voice at the table, that we bring the voice of Yukon Indigenous population and all of our self-governing nations to the table. We're at the cusp of something amazing in Yukon, and I think we all need to work together.
And finally, Mi'kmaq and New Brunswick are working to revitalize their language. And as Angel Moore reports, their approach centers the knowledge and role of elders.
This
is not a typical Mi'kmaq language class. There is no assigned instructor. Here, everyone learns from each other and has a couple of laughs, including Vince Barlow of the Elsipogtog First Nation.
Yeah, it brightens up your day, really, you know what I mean? And Mi'kmaq language is a joyous language.
Elders and new speakers meet every Thursday in the band office at the Elnui Miniguk Mi'kmaq Nation to speak Mi'kmaq in a casual setting, coordinated by Ashley Sunnypass. It's called Language Socials.
When you come, you have the opportunity to not only learn the language, but you're learning stories. You're learning about different medicines. You're learning about your ancestors. There's so much that's tied into it that people get to hear about.
Harrison Millier travels from the Elsipogtog First Nation to attend the socials. He says speaking Mi'kmaq is connecting with ancestors.
A lot of times we forgot our ancestors. And when we talk over here and when we bring them back, it brings back that feelings of, and they're still around. Yeah.
Barlow is a fluent speaker, but he says the gathering helps him just as much as the people he teaches.
And you remember words that you haven't used for about 50 years. You know what I mean? They come up and it's, oh yeah, okay. And the simplest of words you forget because you're not using them.
The weekly gathering includes new learners, such as Katrina Sauk of the Elnu Miniguk Mi'kmaq Nation.
Learning Mi'kmaq makes me proud to be an Indigenous woman, a Mi'kmaq woman. Just being able to teach my children as well, because I didn't learn a lot of Mi'kmaq from my mother.
So far, Sauk is teaching her children words such as,
just kind of like a lot of command words like unka me, like look at me, nestuin, did you hear me? My favorite at bedtime is Gizalo, is I love you, Namotes, I'll see you again, and Ajimpa, go to bed.
Sunnypass began the program 3 years ago so the elders could hear their language and teach others about the Mi'kmaq culture. Sunnypass hopes to expand the program.
Maybe one day we can have a Mi'kmaq language festival of our own here in our community where we would be able to do these type of things and share our Mi'kmaq language with so many different people. So I sort of have that under my hat of something that I would like to see.
Angel Moore, APTN National News, Elnue Miniguk Mi'kmaq Nation.
And that's your APTN News Brief for Wednesday, March 13th. I'm Rick Harp.